How do you navigate law school admissions if you're someone that's struggling with a disability? Whether that's a physical disability or a neurodivergence or a chronic illness. What do you do? How do you apply? How do you get through law school? What happens after law school? Let's talk about it. For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery and I'm the founder here at Barrier Breakers. We are a nonprofit that specializes in working with first generation and minority law school applicants. Today we're talking about navigating the law school admission process with a disability or a chronic illness or some sort of neurodivergence. And this is a topic that's really personal to me because I'm someone that has struggled with this. I have fibromyalgia, I have Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, which is a connective tissue disease, and I have an undifferentiated autoimmune condition. I also have ADHD and deal with some anxiety and depression. And when I started law school, I was really trying to rehab from a dance injury that really took on a life of its own. But I got injured my senior year of college. Before I found out that I had an autoimmune condition or a connective tissue disease, it was sort of the genesis to finding out that I had a connective tissue disease. But when I started law school, I hadn't really healed from this injury. I actually was still in a lot of pain. I was still on pretty heavy painkillers when I started at Harvard Law. I was trying to find doctors. I was going back and forth. I was actually seeing a doctor at Boston Children's Hospital for a little bit, even though I was 21, definitely still slid under that children's moniker there. I was traveling to Waltham, Massachusetts. I was going all different places for my injuries and for the health issues that I had to deal with. I found it difficult to sit for long periods of time. I actually still struggle with my hip in a lot of ways, but I had all of this unexplained pain at the time. It was hard for me to walk. It was hard for me to sit. It was hard for me to stand. It was just quite difficult, but I was trying to navigate all of this during my very first year of law school, when I was also trying to figure out how to study and how to just be a lawyer, be a law school student. And so it's really important to me that I make this video, not just for those of you who are applying, and we're going to talk about how to navigate the law school admission process if you are someone that is dealing with health issues of any kind and what that looks like, or a neurodivergence of any kind. But also we're going to talk about how to navigate law school because not enough people talk about it, and I felt really alone and honestly very stressed and overwhelmed for so many periods of time during law school. But I was able to make it through and I made amazing friends and I really enjoyed my law school experience. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't had advocates and people that showed me how I can get the support that I needed while I was at law school. And I also know what it's like to be a law clerk and a first year associate at a firm struggling through health issues. And so we're going to talk about all of those things today. If you have questions, if there's something that I don't cover, make sure that you put it in the comments or you can submit them to bit.ly/breakinto-law-school. If you're not already, make sure that you are subscribed, that you like and follow our YouTube channel and our podcast, Break Into Law School. We want to hear from you. We want you in our community. And I will also remind you guys that we are a nonprofit. So if you want to continue to support the work that we're doing so that we can continue to support more students pro bono or on a sliding scale so that we can continue to have money for our annual Barrier Breakers Scholarship Fund, you can donate at the link right below or go to givebutter.com/SCOTUS, SCOTUS, if you would like to donate to support our work. So let's start off with the application process. If you are someone that is applying to law school right now, or you're someone who's applying to law school next fall, and you are someone that has, maybe you have a chronic illness or an invisible illness or an invisible disability, as sometimes they're called, hidden disabilities, it means that you look great on the outside, right? Which is, we praise God. But on the inside, secretly, what people don't know is maybe you're struggling with something, whether that's an autoimmune condition, or you have dyslexia, or dysgraphia, or ADHD, like I do, whatever it is, right? You have some additional things that you are dealing with that maybe people don't see. Or maybe they do see it, right? Maybe you're differently abled in a way that is visible and clear, but you're still trying to figure out how to navigate law school. And this is something that, like I said, we work with all the time. We work with a number of students who are on the autism spectrum. We work with a number of students that are neurodivergent in a large number of ways. And of course, we do work with a lot of students through health issues. I'm a firm believer that your health issues, if possible, should not stop you from being able to live out your dreams. And as someone that deals with chronic illness every single day, I really want to just tell you that I believe in you and I support you, and we support you, and we want to help you through this process. So there are a few things that you need to know if you're going through the law school application process, and that is you. That's something that you're dealing with. The first thing is that you should not be afraid to ask for help. Oftentimes we get applicants who might say, oh, I don't want to disclose that I have this because then law schools, they won't accept me. Or maybe they'll think that I can't handle it, or I can't handle the work, or maybe I'm weak, or maybe they'll be concerned, all these things. Those are valid concerns, but I want to tell you that law school admissions officers, they want to help you. They want to make law school work for you. And if you've been able to accomplish as much as you've been able to accomplish while dealing with some of those health things, that just makes you even more of a kick-ass applicant. You're someone that does not shy away of the face of adversity. You don't back down, and you keep going and you persevere. And those are qualities that law school absolutely wants to see. So I encourage you, we have lots of videos, probably do some more as springtime rolls around, about creating strong relationships with admissions professionals, whether that's through LSAC forums or law school fairs, whether you're going to open houses or Zoom events, or whether you're just making an appointment with an admissions officer or admissions dean. Some of them have a lot of open Zoom hours on their website. Those are great questions for you to ask. Hey, I am someone who is dealing with this. These are some ways that I have been able to navigate undergrad or navigate my workspace or my professional space. Could you talk to me a little bit about the supports available for students with disabilities or students with chronic illness or students who need accommodations at your school? That is a perfectly reasonable and fine question, and you should feel free to advocate for yourself. We're going to law school, hopefully to advocate on behalf of others, but step one starts from advocating for yourself. And so that, I encourage you to ask those questions and get the information that you need. Not every school is the same. That is really important as you're building your list. Unfortunately, we live in a world where not every school is actually going to be that accommodating. And not necessarily because they don't want to be accommodating, but not every school is going to be as accommodating. That's so important. And so ask those questions and get the information that you need as you're building your list to make sure that you're going to a school that's going to be a good fit for you. If you need accommodations for the LSAT exam, for the law school admission test, ask early and get the accommodations that you need. Oftentimes students are concerned sometimes that they are not going to be able to get accommodations, or they're concerned that if they get accommodations, law schools will look down on them. First off, law schools do not know if you have accommodations. If you used accommodations on the LSAT exam, that is between you and God, unless you decide to disclose it in an addenda. We can talk about a little bit when and if and why you would want to do such a thing. But it is up to you to disclose. And so if you need accommodations, and that could be because you are in pain and you can't sit for very long, that's actually a legitimate reason for an accommodation. I got accommodations on the bar exam, which we'll talk about in a bit, because I could not sit. I just told you, I could not sit for long periods of time. The bar exam was like 8 hours. There was no way that I was going to be able to sit straight for the bar exam. Again, we'll talk about that when we talk about the bar exam, but there are accommodations for standing desks. There are accommodations for breaks. If you have a physical limitation, you can get accommodations. If you have test anxiety or ADHD or trouble focusing or vision impairments or whatever it might be, there are ways to get breaks and the accommodation, being able to take it on paper instead of taking it on the computer. There are things that you are entitled to, and you should take advantage of every resource available to you that you're entitled to. It's not cheating. It's not getting a handout. Law schools won't look down on you. They won't even know. But that is the very first thing that I'll say is if you are entitled to accommodations, even if you feel like you may not need them, right? If you're entitled to them, take your accommodations because they can make a world of difference in the law school admission test. And the other thing I will say is when we talk about diversity statements, and you guys have been with me long enough, you know that I'm a big fan of writing diversity statements, or, these optional, additional, supplemental statements that they have now in the cycle. That is a very valid topic. And you can talk about the intersection of being a Black woman with a chronic illness, how that has shaped your perspective. If I was talking about myself, I did not write my diversity statement on that, but to be honest, if I had to go back and do it again, I might. But at the time, I was just at the very beginning of my health journey, and I honestly hadn't processed any of this. Now, like 10 years later, I have a lot of feelings. I can write a book, like not even a diversity statement, but I digress. That is a perfectly valid topic for any of those supplemental essays. If you're someone and for whom your health issues have spurred you to go into healthcare law or disability advocacy, you can also talk about it there in that essay. There are a lot of places in which it can factor into your applications, but again, the very first thing I would say is make sure that you are talking to admissions, that you're getting the answers that you need, that you're making sure that all the schools on your list have the accommodations that can support you, that you're talking to other students who maybe have similar conditions or are going through similar things to see how the school has actually navigated it, because I'm telling you, there is a difference between what the schools say that they offer and how students actually are able to access it. Unfortunately, sometimes those are not the same. So really getting in touch with a student that maybe has some of the same issues or similar conditions as you and seeing how they've navigated particular schools can be incredibly helpful. Getting accommodations on the law school admission test, and then, feeling free to write about it in your application process is all very important. When you're in law school, there are things that you can do. And I did not know all of these things when I started law school. I kind of found them out as I went along, but so helpful. So one of the very first things I would say is if you're a student for whom finances are a consideration in your life, look and ask if your school financial aid or student financial services has any kind of grant or financial assistance or reimbursable program for medical expenses that go beyond the allowed personal allowance. So what does that mean? Whenever you look at the cost of attendance for law school, there's tuition, right? Which we know what tuition is, and books, but then usually there's a personal allowance. And what that is like the amount of money that, you can borrow up to, because basically if you're taking out loans, you can borrow up to the total cost of attendance. You can't borrow student loans, right? Federal student loans. You can't borrow them for more than what the total cost of attendance is. And so every school has a personal allowance factored into that total cost of attendance. So if you wanted to borrow for your living expenses like rent and groceries and that sort of thing, you can, right? You don't have to, but you can. And so there are some students, this was me, their personal allowance does not take into consideration all of their medical expenses. It was just very expensive. It was a very expensive honestly, it's been more than 3 years, but that time it was very expensive for me because I didn't know what was going on with me. I didn't have diagnoses. I had pain, I had a lot of symptoms. I had no diagnoses. So I was going to this specialist, to that specialist, like all the specialists all over Massachusetts. I mean, Uber was my best friend. I also couldn't always take public transportation with the pain I was in. Also, I was going quite far, and I'd be trying to fit these doctor's appointments in between classes. I didn't have time because it might have taken me 2 hours if I had done public transportation in class. I had things to do. And that was very expensive. But then, I was also seeing some specialists that weren't necessarily in network because that's who I needed to see. A lot of the treatments that were prescribed were quite expensive. So there was just a lot of costs that I was trying to balance on my own my first year of law school, and I wasn't. I was blowing through my credit card, and it was just a disaster. And then I had a professor who told me that student financial services could help me. That was the first time that I had heard that. And so I went to student financial services, and it's actually on Harvard Law's website now. I didn't know about it at the time. I don't know if it was on the website at the time, but it's there now. And it basically said that if you have documented medical expenses, they can adjust the personal allowance for you. Practically, the way that it worked for me is that I submitted receipts. So I did have to spend money out of pocket, but I submitted receipts and they would reimburse me as a grant for my medical expenses. I think I can't remember if it was all of it or for 50%, somewhere between 50 and 100%. They couldn't reimburse my Ubers, right? Unfortunately. So Uber just got all of my money. But for things that were, if they were massages, if they were chiropractor, if they were medical devices that I had to buy, as long as I had a doctor's note, then the school would give it back to me as a grant. I think we did it like 3 times a year or 3 or 4 times a year. So because there was a limit to how much I could actually spend out of pocket. So that was incredibly helpful. And the only way that I was able to get the help that I needed during those 3 years. I didn't end up getting diagnosed with my autoimmune and connective tissue disease until after I graduated law school. But the treatments and the doctors that I saw during my time in law school, instrumental in my ability to get diagnosed. It says at average it takes some women 8 to 10 years to get diagnosed with certain things. And a lot of that is because our healthcare system is incredibly broken. But a lot of it is because it's just so expensive to go to specialists. And honestly, if I hadn't been in law school and I hadn't had Harvard basically covering all of these out-of-pocket expenses in a way that allowed me to feel comfortable to be aggressive about my health while I was in law school, I don't know where my health journey would have gone. But I was able to be aggressive during law school because Harvard covered the costs. And I had no idea that was even an option to me. And I wouldn't have known unless I had a professor who really took the time to get to know me and ask me why I was so stressed all the time and ask me what was going on. I probably would have still been trying to cover it myself. So that's a really big thing, is to ask financial services or the student disability office, like, what financial supports are available to me to help me navigate my chronic illness or my disability or my neurodivergence. You can get accommodations for law school exams. So I, again, could not sit for very long. And most of the exams were 8-hour take-homes at Harvard, but some of them were 3-hour in-class, in-person exams. And I was able to take them in a separate room with a standing desk and the ability to have breaks. So I could sit, and then, when I needed to stand, I could go to the standing desk and I can work there. I could go back and forth because I couldn't stand for 3 hours either, right? I had to go back and forth. So I was able to take all my exams in a separate room, have that flexibility and be able to take breaks so I could stretch, be able to have heating pads. The school made sure that I had like a really good chair in every classroom. It was a little embarrassing for me at first, I'm not gonna lie to you, because I'm kind of one of those people that's like, oh no, I'm fine. But like, I wasn't fine. And sometimes, like, some of these classrooms, the chairs were very old and not supportive, and like, absolutely not. We had to shut it down. And it didn't matter where my classroom was. It could have been in the basement. It could have been on the 7th floor. The school would make sure that I had a very supportive chair, and I like could go in and like, I felt like Goldilocks, but I could like sit in all these chairs and be like, this is a chair that works for me. Those chairs do not work for me. And then they would make sure that that chair was like in the classroom for me for that semester. I was also able to have the ability to sit in the back if I needed to stand, right? So that I wasn't standing in the middle of class awkwardly. I have social anxiety. That was just a lot. But if I was in the back, I could just kind of like, don't mind me. I'm just going to stand while I listen to the lecture. That worked fine for me. Also being able to have the ability to be near an outlet so I could have a heating pad. There were a lot of things that I was dealing with this, my hip and my injuries have been a lot. And if I needed to miss class, my professors were more than accommodating. If one, I had to miss class for medical appointments, but sometimes I just woke up and it was a bad pain day. Like, today is not the day. And if you have an autoimmune condition, if you have a condition that has flares, sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, cancel the whole day. Right? And that's really hard to explain sometimes to professors, but they were really accommodating and really understanding. And so I just continue to encourage you to advocate for yourself during law school, because there are different things that you can do or you can get to help make law school more bearable and help you be able to navigate that. One of the reasons why it's so important to ask for these accommodations during law school is because when you go to take the bar exam, they will ask you, have you received accommodations before? Whether that's high school, college, law school. And if you say, no, This is my first time. It is very hard to get accommodations for the bar exam. Very hard. I did use my accommodations in law school, so I asked for the same accommodations for the bar exam. This is really where God was just looking out for me, because I still had undiagnosed ADHD at the time. I had all these physical health issues and like illnesses, but I had undiagnosed ADHD and really needed accommodations for that as well, but didn't even know it. And so I got the accommodations. I had to explain to them why I didn't have accommodations for the LSAT exam, which is why I am a big advocate for, if you think you need accommodations on the LSAT exam, get them, because the bar exam will ask you, did you use these accommodations for the LSAT exam? And I had to explain why I didn't. And my answer was, well, I wasn't sick. When I took the LSAT exam, I hadn't gotten injured. I hadn't been on this health journey. I was just like, I'm in college. Like, I didn't know all of this stuff was about to transpire. Super, super easy explanation for them. Why? Why didn't you have accommodations? I literally wasn't injured. Cool. But then I could show them that at the end of my college, like my second semester, my senior year, I did use accommodations because I had been dealing with this pain, and then I used accommodations all the way through law school. So then the bar exam was like, okay, yeah, sure, you can have the same accommodations. And that process still took a long time. I still had to give many, many doctor's notes, but it would have been significantly harder, if not impossible, if the first time that I was going for some of these accommodations was for the bar exam, unless it's something that really had just happened. A lot of times people are so concerned about not getting accommodations, and they're like, oh, I don't want to, oh, I'll be fine. But you have to understand, like, you need to build a case sometimes for things like the bar exam, which has a much higher bar. Getting accommodations for the LSAT exam, honestly, fairly low bar. You have to have your doctor fill out a form and attest to the fact that you do actually need accommodations. But as long as you have a doctor's note and you have explained yourself clearly and it makes sense, you're most likely going to get those accommodations for your LSAT exam. The bar exam is a very high bar. Like, it's not just like, oh, just fill out this form, here you go. They really are going to ask you for a lot of things in order to make sure that you legitimately need the accommodations. And it is just so much harder to get if you have never used the accommodations before. So I did use the accommodations for the bar exam. I had to bring my own standing desk, which, guys, I had to put this like standing desk in an Uber. It was in Baltimore at a hotel. I had to like bring it into the Uber myself and then bring it up to the room. It was a whole thing. And I had a little suitcase, and in my suitcase I had my heating pad, and I think I had like a foam roller and like a muscle stick and like all of these things. I could have my sit to stand desk so I could sit and stand whenever I needed. I had, I think, 3 10-minute breaks or something like that, interspersed outside of the main break. The bar exam is very strict about what can even be in the room. So it was me and this proctor in a room. So I could take it in a room by myself. I had my heating pad. I had all of these other things. And it's really the only way that I was going to be able to take the bar exam, because it was 8 hours long and it was so physically demanding. Of course, it was mentally demanding, but it was really hard on my body. And so I needed to have those supports, because unlike law school, they weren't giving me a new chair. It was very like, here you go, you have these accommodations, but you can provide your own standing desk. And I was like, well, that's wild, but thank you, I suppose, for giving me the ability to provide my own standing desk. But, you know, it really was a different situation. And I was able to do that because I had used accommodations similarly during law school and also for my exams my senior year of college. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is, like, when is it like being a lawyer with physical challenges, with mental health and neurodivergence, or any kind of chronic health, chronic illness? Like, how do you navigate being a lawyer like that? I will say it's really very important that you are upfront and transparent, even though that can be very difficult, especially with repercussions in hiring, and that you do your due diligence in your homework. So I was a clerk for a judge, and she was wonderful. And I was really concerned because as a law clerk, you have to, I was a trial level state law clerk, and you have to sit in court all day long. We have, in this video, been over the fact that sitting for long periods of time just does not mesh well with Sydney. And so I didn't know what to do. Thankfully, my judge understood. My judge had 2 hip replacements. And she understood like that chronic pain life, and she had a standing desk in chambers, and I was able to get workplace accommodations to have a standing desk in chambers. I couldn't have one in the court, but I could have a heating pad, and my judge knew if I needed to like go take a like 10-minute 5-minute stroll in the hallway to stretch my hip. Yeah, she knew. The other thing is that my judge couldn't sit forever without pain. And so we kind of worked together to take these breaks. And it's hard when you're a law clerk. Typically, you don't get days off. You're off when your judge is off. But I still had a lot of doctor's appointments, and she was really understanding about that. And I tried to really plan my doctor's appointments around her schedule. There was a lot that I went through health-wise the year that I clerked. It was a very difficult year for me health-wise, but having a judge that understood, having a judge that wanted me to be healthy, which sounds wild, like doesn't everyone want you to be healthy? But having a judge that actually cared about me made a huge difference. And then when it came time for me to apply to be at a firm, I was very upfront with them about the fact that I really needed to be able to work from home at least 2 days. And this was pre-COVID, so much higher ask than it is now. Right, it wasn't really heard of that a first-year associate would be working from home, but I needed to use those days to schedule doctor's appointments. I got the firm to pay for a standing desk and an ergonomic chair. I went to the Healthy Back store and got to pick out a chair. I was just very clear about what I needed in order to be healthy. Ultimately, it was still very difficult. I can't lie to you. It was incredibly difficult for me to balance being a litigator, because I was a family lawyer, with the increase in my health appointments and health needs. But I was always very happy with the fact that I wasn't hiding it. I was very transparent about what was happening. I also learned that stress was a huge trigger, which sounds obvious, but I had to learn that the hard way. And it's ultimately made different decisions in my life, but the fact of the matter remains that being able to know clearly what I needed, have some workarounds, have people that I could talk to, I could advocate for myself, those all made a really big difference. It is completely possible to be a lawyer and have ADHD or chronic illness, or be on the autism spectrum, or have a neurodivergence, or have physical disability, or whatever it is that you are going through. I don't want you to think that because I have this thing I can't be a lawyer. You absolutely can. But the way that you move through the world and what you need to do in order to make sure that you get the care that you need, that you have the opportunities that you need, that you're taking care of yourself and you're not sacrificing your body and your health, and you're not putting yourself in unnecessary pain in order to become a lawyer. There are things that you have to do, and there is support though. There's also support. I had wonderful people who I found through Facebook, actually, who talked me through how to take the bar exam as someone who needs accommodations. And I talked to other lawyers who had health issues, who told me about what they asked for, which I didn't even know all the things that I could ask for. I was like, for real? They'll pay for that? For real? I can ask for that? For real? Like, I didn't know, like my parents didn't know, I didn't know, but I had people who told me, yes, ask your employer for this. Have you asked your employer for that? Yes, ask the school for this, ask the school for that. And that helped me learn what I could ask for, and that helped me be a better self-advocate. So I'm hoping that this quick video is just one step in your line of information that helps you be a better self-advocate if you are going through this. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Like I said, you can always ask in the comments or submit questions to bit.ly/breakintolawschool. We definitely want to hear from you. I am so excited for you and your future as a lawyer, and I know that the things that we have, that we carry, do not make us weaker. They do not set us back, but they are the things that make us stronger, and we are better attorneys, better advocates, and better people because we have learned how to navigate life with the additional things that we carry. And so remember that it is your superpower. It is the thing that makes you you, and the thing that's going to make you successful and empathetic and just an all-around fantastic kick-ass attorney. And so I'm excited for you. As a reminder, make sure that you like, subscribe, follow our podcast and our YouTube, and I will see you guys very soon.